Hello guys, I'm Nick and welcome to this new video. Now today, this is gonna be my first live video where I'm gonna be talking and actually doing things at the same time, so please go ahead and give me feedback in the comments down below how this is going. Now what we're gonna be doing today is ranking all of the different CSGO knives in this tier list that you see in front of you. I've already gone ahead and modified a bit the tier list to suit my needs, to suit what I think about the different knives, and I think we are ready to get into it. While I'll be talking about the knives, I'll also try, and showcase you special animations that they might have or special characteristics that they might have, and I really hope you enjoy the video. And the first knife we're gonna be taking a look at is the Bayonet. Now, the Bayonet for me is a really good knife, and I think this should go into A tier. It has a really nice pull-out animation where the guy flicks it around his hand and it makes it fly, and I think this is a perfect knife if you're an opper, just because of how you can pull it out and how you can inspect it after you've taken an op shot. Overall, a really solid pickup, a really good knife, and I think, yeah, it's definitely on the A tier. The next knife we're taking a look at is the Bowie knife, and I think this is actually a B tier knife. Now this might be a bit of a controversial opinion because a lot of people rank the Bowie knife really low, simply because while you're inspecting it you can only see one hand, so one glove. I personally think it's unjustified. It's a really big blade, so if you have a nice slaughter pattern or if you have a nice fade pattern, you can really showcase it, as well as it has a really cool pull-out animation and inspect animation that you can play around with. So I understand you don't see both of your gloves, but still this is a B tier knife for me. Okay, so next up we have the butterfly knife, and the butterfly knife, in my opinion, it can only be on the S tier. It's the best knife that is currently in CSGO. It's the dream knife for everyone. It has two different pull-out animations, two different inspect animations, and it's a really nice blade to play with. You can get it in very different patterns, which, spices it up a bit, but as well as loads of oppers use it, loads of riflers use it. I think this at the moment is the most famous CSGO knife that you can get. Unfortunately, the prices for butterfly knives are still quite high, so I don't think I'll be able to pick one up really soon, but if I could, I would definitely buy a butterfly knife. Next up we have the classic knife, and I'm putting this into B tier, so right next to the Bowie knife, because I think this is a really nice addition to the game. It has two different pull-out animations, it has two different inspect animation, one of which is really cool because the guy literally launches the knife in the air, as well as it takes from the old animation while you walk, where the guy just plays a bit with the blade and, goes around with it. Unfortunately, the blade is not that pretty because of that yellowish thing that goes around it. I get it that they wanted to keep the old style of the classic knife, but still I don't think it's the best blade that you can get. So yeah, it goes into B tier together with the Bowie knife. We then have the falchion knife, and this was actually the first knife I ever bought. And unfortunately this one goes down into D tier. Why do I put it into D tier? Just because while you hold it, the blade is just so tiny, and I think the pull-out animation and the inspect animations are not that fancy. One thing that the falchion knife has is a super rare animation. It took me actually quite a while to record it for you, where the guy basically makes it float in its hand, and it's really nice animation. Unfortunately, it's just so rare that you barely ever see it, and it doesn't help the knife go any further than D tier. Okay, now we're moving on to the flip knife, and the flip knife in my eyes goes up to B tier together with the Bowie and the classic knife. Why do I say that? Well, it's a really classic knife. It's one of the oldest knives that are in CSGO, and I have to say the normal animation is quite interesting, as well as the inspect animation. It can get a bit repetitive after a while, but I still think this is deserving of its B tier. I have to say this is another knife that if you're a prolific opper, if you're a guy that ops a lot, you want to be picking up, just because the character flicks it up and after an op shot it looks really nice. That's also why it's gotten into B tier, and the fact that it has a lot of patterns that look really good on it, and it can give you a really nice cheap skin. Flip knives are actually really cheap, and they can fit almost any glove. Alright, next up we have the gut knife, and the gut knife unfortunately goes down into D tier with the falchion knife. Gut knives, again, one of the oldest knives in CS. I understand the concept behind it, but I really, in general, don't like the shape of the blade. I like the animations, the pull-out animation and the inspect animation quite a lot, and you're gonna see it very soon. But unfortunately, it's just not a knife that I would be picking up if I wanted a complete inventory. It has a saving grace, and it's the fact that it's really, really cheap. You can get a gut knife tiger tooth for basically nothing, and it's an okay looking knife. I'm putting it together with a falchion knife right here, but actually when I think about it, I think it could go up to C tier. It's not as bad as a falchion knife. It can go up to C tier, yeah, I'll keep it right here. Moving on to one of my favorite knives in CS, there's the Huntsman. And a lot of you would probably put the Huntsman in D tier or C tier. Well, for me, the Huntsman knife goes all the way up to S tier. It is an amazing looking knife. I'm a really big fan of how the Huntsman looks. It has a really super cool animation that I love to play with the op, or even while I'm waiting. For example, if there's a timeout or whatever, the Huntsman is what I'm going for. I had loads of Huntsman in my inventory. I had a Fade, I had a Tiger Tooth, and I had a Slaughter, and I really loved all of them. In my opinion, this is an S tier knife, and I really hope it will make a comeback in CSGO skins. Right now, it's really, really cheap. You can get a black laminate Huntsman for like 130-ish euros, and an Autotronic for 140 euros, so they are really, really cheap. And in my opinion, they give you a lot of value for the money that you're paying. Another member of the S tier has to be the Karambit, and there it goes. The Karambit, super classic knife. It's been in the game for forever. It is absolutely amazing what you can do with a Karambit. Loads of pro players use it. And while you walk with a Karambit, there's also I'm gonna call it special animation, but an animation where the guy basically plays around with his knife a bit, and I really think it's funny. If I had to get a knife right now, it'd probably be between the Huntsman and the Karambit black laminates. Finally, again, for the S tier, I'm taking the M9 Bayonet. I had loads as well of M9 Bayonets, and they all go into S tiers. It's definitely better than the A tier normal Bayonet, because it's a thicker, girthier blade, as well as it has these spikes along the back, and in general, I love the pull-out animation and the inspect animation as well. It's a really, really popular knife between pros, so I cannot say why you wouldn't put it in anything else other than the S tier. We're moving on to one of the most painful knives ever, and it is the Navajo knife, and this goes straight into the S tier right here. This knife is absolutely horrible. Let me give you an example, okay? Between D and the S tier, okay, I'd rather use my default knife than having a Navajo knife. I absolutely despise and hate the Navajo knife. I think its animations are very boring. I think the blade is too small to see any pattern on it, and I do not see any kind of value on a Navajo knife. You can pick the cheapest knives that you can pick up right now are actually Navajo knives. They go for around 40 to 50 euros. And unfortunately, I'd rather play with my default knife than use something like this. One of the knives that actually started off as a really cheap knife, but now they are having a basically resurgence, is the Nomad knife, which I'm putting all the way up into A tier. Why this resurgence happened? Well, YouTubers like Heyzeus made actually really good videos on the matter, so I'm gonna link it down below, and it is the Simple effect. So, for long story short, Simple started playing with a Nomad knife, Blue Gem, in a lot of its very important games. And the knife's price actually started skyrocketing, as far as I'm understanding. So it's a really nice knife. It has two different pull-out animations, including one where the character actually hurts his hand and he has to shake it off, or two different inspect animations as well. So I really think this is a nice knife overall, but it has added this factor that is increasing the price by quite a bit. So that's why it goes all the way up into A tier. Next up, we have the paracord knife, which I'm putting into B tier. It's a boxy kind of knife. It has two different pull-out animations. One where the character throws it between one hand and each other, and the normal animation looks quite a bit like whack, you know, it doesn't have anything special. It has 2 different inspect animations as well, and I like boxy knives in general, and I really like the paracord especially, so that's why I'm putting it into B tier. It cannot go up to the A tier, but still it can make a very nice impression in my eyes. The next knife we're going to be talking about is actually 2 knives, and it's the shadow daggers. The shadow daggers, in my opinion, are a novelty item in CS, and that's why I'm putting them down into D tier. They can be quite fun to play with at the start. You can get really cheap ultraviolets, knights, autotronic, tiger tooth, marble fades. They are all around or under 100 euros, so they can be gotten for really cheap. But unfortunately, after a while they get really boring to play with. One cool thing is that your gloves actually show up really well when you have shadow daggers, but they are flawed by one very major thing, and it is the fact that when you pull out your shadow daggers, your crosser actually shakes a bit, and it makes it harder to aim. I really dislike this thing, and Valve hasn't still patched it after years that they've been out, and you can actually see it on screen right now. I really don't know why you would go for a pair of shadow daggers when you can get a gut knife for basically the same price. Okay, now we move on to the skeleton knife, and this one goes up straight into A tier. Why did they put it into A tier and not into S tier? I think the skeleton knife still has to earn its way up to the S tier. It has 2 different pull-out animation, one of which is a really nice thing where the guy spins it around his finger, but the other animation, which is the more common one, I actually think it's quite boring. It just pulls out the knife normally, there's no flicking, there's no spinning, and then it has 2 different inspect animations. The normal one is again quite a boring inspect animation. The nicer one is actually the guy spins it around his finger and it makes it look like a little helicopter, which I think is really nice. Another thing that goes for the skeleton knife is the fact that the blade is just so enormous and there's tape around it, so the whole knife gets colored if you get a really nice slaughter pattern or a crimson web pattern. We now move on to the stiletto, and you might be surprised that I'm actually putting this onto A tier. I really think the stiletto is a nice knife that can be gotten again for quite cheap. You can get a tiger tooth stiletto for under 200 euros at the moment, so I think it's a really good value for money knife. Nico played a lot with a stiletto fade, and in general the blade might be really small, but I think it makes up for it by the great animation that it has and the fact that it's just a really nice knife to play with. Again, it has 2 different pull-out animations, and I love the animation for the inspect where the guy spins it around his hand and he throws it a bit in the air. I think this is a super nice knife and it deserves its spot onto the A tier. Moving on to, we have the survival knife, and I am putting this into C tier. I'm not really convinced by the survival knife. I don't like both of the inspect animations. The pull-out animation, one of the 2 ones, it's really nice where the guy throws it and catches it in the air. I am unfortunately not convinced about it. I think this is a bit of a reused knife. It looks like a flip knife and a Huntsman had a baby and this thing came out. I kind of don't like what it does. That's why I'm putting it into C tier. It's not even that cheap, honestly, when you look at the other knives in this category. So yeah, it deserves its spot into C tier for me. We now move on to the talon knife, or the Karambit's smaller brother or cousin, and again this looks like a Huntsman and a Karambit had a baby, but unfortunately the baby doesn't end up in S tier, it ends up in A tier, unfortunately. Why am I saying unfortunately? Because if it wasn't for the handle being so wacky, if it was more like a Karambit handle, I think this would have ended up into S tier, due to the fact that it has 2 great animations, especially the inspect animation is amazing, and I love the shape of the blade, honestly. I love the ruggedness around the blade, and I think this, without this wooden-ish handle, could have made it into S tier. Last but not least, we have the Ursus knife, and this goes straight again into B tier. Another super cool boxy knife. It has 2 different pull-out animation. One of them is quite boring, the other one, again, the guy throws it in the air and catches it mid-flight. I really like this knife. I had a Ursus tiger tooth quite a while ago, and I think it's a knife that I'm gonna rebuy in the future. Nico again used to use a Ursus fade if I'm not mistaken, and in general I guess it fits the B tier. It's not a super expensive knife. You can get a tiger tooth for around 250 euros right now, but unfortunately it doesn't make the cut to go up into A tier. So guys, this is it. I want to thank you for watching throughout the video, and please go ahead and in the comments down below leave your opinions, what your personal tier list is, what knives you would put where, and please let me know why the Navajo is just a bad knife and why you'd rather play with your default knife. I'd also like to thank each and every one of you for sticking up with me. I haven't been posting for quite a while now, and I just wanted to get back into the thick of things. And really, thank you again for watching the video, and remember, good luck and have fun.